All right, just a quick little video. Show you the Game Boy with the pink screen cover bezel on there, as I mentioned in the previous video. For this, I put the gray one on initially, but later decided to go with the pink one. My initial idea was to go green, pink, green, pink with pink membranes. But that didn't look good, so I put the gray one on there with just green, and that looked good. But then I put the pink bezel back on with this all being green and not having the pink membranes, and I think that looks the best. So that's all good, and for the most part, everything is good, but there's a small flaw that I want to point out, and I don't know if anyone noticed this in the video. It's so minor. And that's what's just so crazy about it. It's the most minor little flaw in the way that this kit is handling the display. And it's not just mine. I posted this on Reddit, and at least one other person said that they noticed the same thing. Now, again, I don't know if they noticed it until I pointed it out, and they kind of sounded like they went back and looked at theirs, and they had, by the sounds of it, some DMGs or some pockets with this latest version of the FunnyPlaying Q5 with the OSD. So this has the on-screen display, and this seems to be a fairly new addition, a fairly new upgrade to this kit. The previous Q5 had the same color palette, and that's what's on my pocket, and it's only this latest OSD version that has this issue. I've had two previous DMGs with the IPS screen, and I have my Pocket, I have my Game Boy Color with an IPS upgrade panel in it, I have my Game Boy Advance, and none of them have ever had this issue. So it's kind of a weird issue to screw up. It's kind of a silly thing for FunnyPlaying to have screwed up and not noticed, but at the same time, it's such a small issue. I didn't notice it at first. In fact, I made that entire first video building this and showing it off, and I didn't notice it until later, and I started to feel like something feels like it's off in certain games. And then, well, let me show you with Tetris here. Because Tetris is what, like, when I was building this and showing it off, I was mostly showing Tetris. And there's something here that gives it away. And again, in the video, I doubt any of you noticed. I'd be really surprised if anyone noticed. And we can kind of see it here, but it's even less noticeable here. So the very first vertical column of resolution is shifted down one, and I think we're actually seeing more than we should. We shouldn't see this anyways. So on the very left side, this very left column is shifted down a pixel. Not very noticeable in Tetris. And on the right side, we're actually cropped over. We're cropped the very furthest, the very last right column of vertical resolution is cropped out. And again, in most games, not noticeable. In most games, not a big deal. In that little trademark here, it's noticeable. It's cutting off that very last vertical column of resolution. Again, in Tetris, not very noticeable, and that's partially why I don't think I noticed it right away, because I was mostly showing Tetris. But the fact that it shifted down 1 pixel becomes a little bit more noticeable in motion and a little bit more noticeable here. So I'll just move over a little bit. And as you can see, this very first vertical column of resolution being shifted down a pixel makes everything look like it's kind of drooping down. And in motion, I think it's especially noticeable, just that is happening there. So, geez, again, it's such a minor thing, that I didn't notice it right away, but once I did notice it, can I unnotice it? It's almost like having a dead pixel on a monitor. You might not notice it right away, but once you know that it's there, it's hard to not notice. The fact we're cropped out, this furthest right last column of vertical resolution, the fact that's cropped out 1 pixel, not a huge deal. Most games don't go right to that very edge, but there are a few where text goes right up to that edge, so that very last vertical, you know, section of a font you may miss. Again, in this game, I think there is a bit of font that goes right up to the very edge. Yeah, the A on that doesn't look quite right, does it? Now you can still tell it's an A, but you can kind of tell the, the right part of the A. Oh, the R in the registered circle around the R was cut off there. So, oh, and yep, see the O in Nintendo there is slightly cut off. So, yeah, that kind of sucks. But again, it's such a minor thing. When you're playing the game, you're probably never going to notice that. Other than this on the left side, the first column where it droops down 1 pixel, it was shifted down 1 pixel, and gives it that drooping look. So that's maybe noticeable when you're playing the game. That maybe not so much, but yeah. And again, it's not. So at first I started thinking, like, is it an issue with my DMG or my specific kit? Did I get a bad kit? But again, posting this on Reddit, I'm not the only one with this issue. And this is a fairly new kit with the OSD. So maybe it's not super. I don't know how long this kit's been out. If it just came out, in the last couple of months. But maybe as more people notice it, maybe, it's something that FunnyPlaying will kind of quietly revise and fix out. But it kind of sucks. And I really like having the on-screen display. It does make changing some of these settings really easy. But at the same time, would I rather have the previous version where you don't get the on-screen display, but it's the same Q5 panel, it's the same 36 color palette, just without the on-screen display. It's a little bit harder to maybe go through and change some settings, but would I rather have that and not have this issue, or have the on-screen display, which makes things a little bit easier, but has this small issue? Again, it's such a minor issue. For some of you, you might not care, but for some of you, it might be a deal breaker. So keep an eye out on that. Again, maybe FunnyPlaying will admit it was an issue. Maybe they'll just be quiet on it and pretend it's never happened, or it's not an issue. But I don't know. Again, this kit's fairly new. Maybe it's not all of them, but it's not just mine. Again, some of you may have never noticed, but for some of you, it may be something that you can never not notice. So, is what it is, I guess. Like I said, it's probably not worth sending back to China for something that technically it's not just this one that's defective. They might all be like this, the OSD version, or at least some of them might be like this. It's like they just missed something in the scaling and cropping in the way that the driver works. That is, something's just off by 1 pixel. The whole image is basically shifted over 1 pixel. And no, if you're wondering, moving the image around, so in here you got your X and Y where you can move the image around, that doesn't fix it. So that moves the whole thing up and down in the window, but the whole thing's moving with the borders and the cropping all intact. So the issue is still intact as you move the whole thing around in that window. So no, that does not fix the issue. So yeah, again, is what it is. Not a huge deal, but just wanted to point it out. Otherwise, this thing looks amazing. I guess I'm still pretty happy with it overall. I think I can live with that little issue. Let me know if you think it's worth making any kind of a big deal over or not, or if it's something that you noticed or would have noticed. I'm curious what you guys think about that. It's not perfect, but perhaps nothing ever is. I mean, with every IPS kit or whatever, you could always find maybe some flaw. But I don't know. Again, every other IPS kit I've got, they've never screwed up something like that. It's such a silly thing to screw up, but it's such a minor thing to screw up by having the, the image cropping or something is just off by 1 pixel. Like, man, is what it is. I guess that's it. See you guys later.